When I saw the wolves burst from the trees, my breath caught hard because I realized they had not come by accident. I had come up the frozen track to bring the old man salt and tea, the way I did each month, thinking it would be another quiet visit. We called him Dead because he was older than the forest looks, lean as a dry branch, stubborn as the wind. His cabin squatted in a hollow of the taiga, smoke thin as a thread above the roof. I was halfway to the porch when the door slammed open and 3 men stepped out, faces wrapped in scarves, guns easy in their hands. They said he owed them meat, skins, money. They said tribute like the forest was theirs to tax. Dead did not argue. He stood with his palms down, as if smoothing the air. I wanted to speak, but my mouth filled with snow. Then the clearing breathed. Gray bodies poured out of the timber like shadows turning real. First one, then 2 more, then the rest, silent, deliberate, no wasted motion. The largest wolf looked straight at me, and something inside me stuttered. He did not bare his teeth. He did not even blink. It felt wrong and right at once, like seeing a stranger wear your father's coat. The bandits swore, their rifles lifted a finger's width higher. Dead did not move. I told myself this was simple. Wolves smell people. They spread, they pass, they vanish. It is ordinary out here. But they did not pass. They fanned into a loose half ring, not around the deer trails, not around the sled, but around the cabin. One young wolf drifted behind the men and sat in the shadow of a stump, yellow eyes steady. The big one stepped forward until I could hear the faint click of his claws on ice. My heart climbed into my throat and stayed there. "Get inside, old man," the tallest bandit said. His voice shook just enough to notice. He jabbed his barrel toward the door. Dead did not go. He lifted one hand, slow, like calming a skittish horse, and whispered something I could not catch. The big wolf tilted his head as if listening. The air felt crowded with meanings I could not name. I knew the rules of this place, and none of them covered what I was seeing. The men tried to laugh. It sounded thin. One took a step and slipped, boots skidding on a patch of glassy snow. A smaller wolf rose and paced once, tight and measured, tail low, ears forward, a movement meant for someone who understood it. I felt it like a hand on my sleeve, not a threat, a warning. My fear cracked open, and for a breath something warm and heavy spilled through it. Respect, maybe, or shame. I did not know. I told myself the pack would test the air and slide back into the trees. I told myself this was the moment the old man would hand over what they wanted and live to see morning. I told myself the wolves would turn their attention to the scent of elk further downslope, and this would be a story we all forgot by spring. I thought, this is where it ends. But nature had another turn waiting. The tallest man lifted his gun higher, and the big wolf stepped between him and the old man. Not a lunge, not a charge, a placing of a body the way a person might step in front of a child at a roadside. He looked at me again, and it hit me so hard I almost swayed. He was choosing a side. My chest burned like I had run for miles. Every thought I had about beasts and people fell out of my head. Nobody breathed. The cold pressed into my ears until I could hear my own pulse. Dead's fingers trembled once and then stilled. The bandits shifted, boots crunching, eyes cutting from the wolf to the door to the trees and back again. The young one in the shadow never blinked. The big wolf did not flinch. I wish I could say I understood any of it. I did not. I only know that the forest felt awake, like it had looked up and found us arguing in its kitchen. I knew if I spoke the wrong word, the world would tilt. I also knew something else, something that made my scalp prickle. This was not a random crossing of paths. If I had known then that this was only the beginning, I would have prayed for a smaller miracle. The big wolf did not spring. He moved to the old man's side and stood there, shoulder to knee, as if a line had been drawn and he had chosen where to stand. My legs tensed to run, but I could not move. The men glanced at one another, then at the door, then back to the wolf, and their jokes dried in their throats. His eyes were not rage, they were guardrails. I thought he would slip away now, and it would all be over. But this was only the beginning. The old man's breath smoked in short puffs. He whispered again, the same low thread of sound I had heard before, and his hand hovered in the air, palm open, not touching the wolf, not daring to. The big wolf angled his head toward him, then back to the men, like a sentry checking both directions on a road. I felt the change more than I saw it. The clearing was no longer a place where anything could happen. It had rules now, and they came from the animal. One bandit tried to grin. It came out wrong, too many teeth. His gloves squeaked on the stock as he took aim, the barrel rising a finger's width, then another. The wolf took a single step forward, slow, sure, unblinking. The man froze. I could hear a faint chitter of ice under the wolf's pads and the dry click of the man's tongue against his teeth. My heart crawled higher until it pressed my voice flat. I saw the beast look at them as if it understood everything, not like a pet begging, not like a hunter choosing a target. It was the look a person gives when he has already decided to take the weight. The young wolf in the shadow stood as well, not to flank, not to circle, but to mirror the big one, as if two doors had closed at once. The pack behind them loosened and settled, bodies low, tails neither tucked nor high, waiting. That word throbbed in my head. Waiting for what? "Back off," the tallest man said, but he was speaking to himself. The old man did not move. He kept his hand open in the air as if he were holding a small flame and did not want the wind to take it. The wolf's ears tipped toward that hand and then flattened again toward the gun, protection that could turn into force, and yet did not. The second man swore and shifted to the left, trying to get a clean line past the animal's shoulder. The big wolf matched the slide without taking his eyes off the muzzle. A measured half step, a living shield. I felt shame rise in me, hot and ugly, for every time I had laughed at the old man's talk about the forest remembering. The wolf was doing for him what men were supposed to do for each other. Snow dusted down from a fir branch with a soft hiss. The young wolf shook it from his back, and the sound went through the men like a shiver. The one with the aim licked his lips and squinted as if that would make it easier to pretend this was normal. The wolf did not blink, not once. I realized I was counting the seconds between blinks, and there were none to count. "Easy," I heard myself say, though I could not tell who I meant. The old man's eyes flicked toward me and then returned to the animal, as if to say, "Do not break this thread." The big wolf let out a breath I could hear, a faint sigh that fogged the cold. It felt like a verdict. For a moment, the tallest man lowered the barrel, like reason had found a small crack in him, and pushed a finger through. I felt my chest loosen. I told myself the wolf would step back. The pack would melt into the trees. The men would throw a curse over their shoulders and trudge away lighter. I told myself the old man would laugh his dry laugh, and we would share tea, and I would go home and sleep like none of this had happened. It seemed to me he would leave now, and it would all end. But this was only the beginning. The third man, the one with the red scarf, snapped, "Enough," and brought his rifle up quick, as if speed could hide fear. The big wolf flowed forward again, another sure step, then planted himself, chest square, eyes level, body saying no with such quiet that it was louder than any snarl. Behind him, two more wolves rose, their bodies a gray wall that made the cabin feel suddenly small and brave. I felt the stutter in my own blood turn into a rhythm I had not known I had. The old man's hand lowered a breath's width, then lifted again. The thread held. I did not know why the pack had come, or what promise was being kept, or what debt the forest was collecting. I only knew that nothing was random anymore, and that whatever came next would either break us or bind us. The big wolf did not blink. The man with the red scarf did not breathe. The snow kept falling, thin as ash, as if the sky wanted to see how this would end. They started shouting, words thrown like stones, hard and useless. "Move, old man. Call off your mutts. You think this is funny?" The tallest one slammed his boot into the porch step. The one in the red scarf racked his rifle like noise could make courage. Snow rattled from the roof. The old man did not flinch. The big wolf did not give them a single inch. He slid forward and set himself between them and the door, chest square, legs planted, head high. He did not bare his teeth. He did not show fang. He simply stood, and the space behind him felt suddenly safe. He stood in front of the old man like his bodyguard. The words rose in me before I knew I had them. I felt the truth of it in my skin. "Back up!" the red scarf yelled, but his voice broke in the middle. The big wolf took that in and did nothing. The pack behind him flowed wider, not a full circle, just enough to guide the men into one narrow lane, a path that led away from the door and toward the trees. It was not a trap. It was a suggestion. The forest itself seemed to nod toward it. The old man lifted his hand, slow, open, careful, and set it on the wolf's shoulder. I held my breath so hard it hurt. The fur lay flat under his palm, no growl, no twitch. The animal leaned the weight of a breath into that touch, as if he recognized the hand. The air changed. Even the bandits felt it. I saw it in the way their eyes flicked to each other, counting the parts of this they could not explain. "Don't you move," the tallest one said, but he said it to a world that wasn't listening. The big wolf's ears tipped back toward the old man and then forward toward the rifles. He worked the line between tenderness and warning without a sound. The young wolf to the left copied him, step for step, like a shadow learning to be real. I saw a pale groove around the big wolf's neck, a thin old scar where fur lay shorter, like something once cinched there and almost kept him. I did not say it aloud, but the thought came anyway. The forest remembers. The old man's fingers curled, gentle, into the rough, and I felt heat climb behind my eyes. I had never believed in signs. This looked like one. "Bang the air, scare 'em," the second man hissed. The red scarf raised his rifle again, but the muzzle wobbled. The wolf lifted his head a fraction, eyes steady, and the wobble stopped as if held by those eyes alone. I could hear small sounds now, the click of claw on ice, the wet swallow of a nervous throat, the soft hiss of falling snow. Every sound asked me to pay attention. The tallest man tried a different angle. "You think that beast will save you? One shot and he's gone." He sliced his arm through the cold, trying to cut a path to the door with his voice. The big wolf answered with a single step that closed the path again. Not menace, position, as clear as a hand on a doorknob. "This way is shut," the old man whispered, and the wolf flicked an ear, and I knew they were tuned to the same station. It scared me and steadied me at the same time. The pack settled lower, haunches near snow, ready to move in whatever direction the big one chose. He did not choose violence. He chose place. He chose the old man. My heart hammered so hard, it felt like a signal fire. "Enough!" the red scarf barked, but the bark belonged to a fox cornered under a shed. He took a half step, and the big wolf slid to fill it. The motion was clean as water, and somehow that was worse than rage. The second man cursed and spit, and the spit froze before it hit the ground. No one laughed this time. I almost let myself breathe out. I thought the wolf had scared them off, and it would be over. I pictured the men backing down the trail, their threats shrinking with each yard, the pack melting into spruce shadow, the old man and me sitting at his table with tea and salt and the kind of silence that heals. But what came next, I will never forget. The shot cracked the sky open. It was aimed up, a warning into the pale air, and still the sound hit me in the ribs. The big wolf flinched a single step, no more. One pad back, weight still forward, eyes still fixed on the muzzle. Steam blew from his nose. The men grinned like boys who had just found the switch that turns off fear. For a heartbeat, even I believed it. Fear had won. The animal would break and run. The story would end with footprints fading into spruce shade. "See?" the tallest one said, shoulders loosening. He worked the bolt like a man opening a door he was sure of. The red scarf laughed without laughter in it. The second man swung his barrel toward the open lane the wolves had left, as if to herd them through it. I felt my chest unclench, almost grateful for the simple version of events. A loud noise, nature remembering its place, the night closing over what we had nearly made of it. Then the big wolf did something I still can't say, without feeling the ground tilt. He turned from the guns, walked those 3 steps back, and sat beside the old man. Not at his feet, not behind him, shoulder to knee again, close enough that their breaths mingled, and then he folded himself down as if he had chosen a post and would keep it until morning. He did not look at the rifles. He looked at the door, the porch, the old man's hand. He chose to remain. He chose to remain with him. The old man's fingers hovered, then settled gently into the rough. No snarl, no flinch, only a long, slow exhale from the animal, a quiet that out-talked the gun. He leaned a weight you could measure with your palm against the old man's leg, and I understood it in my bones. He would not move unless the old man did. He sat beside him like a sentinel sworn by a vow I could not hear. "Old man's a witch," the second one muttered, not loud but loud enough to betray him. "Or a shaman. Something." The red scarf's grin cracked in the middle. The tallest one tried to rebuild certainty with words. "Shoot again," he told himself more than us. But his hands had learned a new tremble and could not hide it. Behind the big wolf, the pack eased into a wide, loose arc, not closing, not threatening, just holding that narrow lane to the trees like a suggestion that had become a rule. One young wolf yawned, slow and rude, and lay down where he could watch the red scarf's feet. Another turned his head to the wind as if checking the weather for us all. The big one never looked away from the old man. I told myself it was a trick of light, a coincidence of timing, a story I would fix in my head later so it made sense. But then the old man spoke, barely a thread, and the wolf's ear tipped back to catch it like a name. He did not bare teeth. He blinked, once, soft, and the porch seemed to take a breath with him. He stood in front of the old man like his bodyguard, and now he sat beside him like family. The two truths kept trading places until I couldn't tell them apart. "Get up," the tallest one barked, and the bark bounced off wood and snow and died. The big wolf remained. He turned his body a fraction, so that the old man was more covered than before, a geometry of protection drawn without chalk. The red scarf spat a curse and lifted his gun again, but the barrel drifted downward on its own, as if the animal's calm had weight. A clump of snow thudded from a spruce and shattered beside the men's boots. They flinched like it was another shot. The young wolf who had yawned rolled to his belly and watched them with the patient stare of a farmer measuring weather. I could feel it rising in me, that impossible double pull, terror and gratitude, until my hands shook with both. I almost laughed. Relief had a taste, metal and warm, and it filled my mouth. The loud thing had happened. The beast had stepped back. The spell had broken, and order would return. I was sure. Now the animal would leave, the men would stomp away, and we would close the door on this night. I was certain the wolf would go, but this was only beginning. The red scarf snapped first. He lunged and swung the rifle butt at the old man's temple, a mean, chopping motion meant to end the night in a single crack. I did not even have time to shout. The big wolf exploded upward, not at the man's throat, not at his body. He went for the wood. He hit the stock with a hard slap of shoulder and paw, a clean strike that turned the blow into splinters of sound. The rifle spun from the man's hands and clattered across the porch, skidding into the drift like a thrown bone. The growl that followed did not sound like anger. It sounded like a door opening into a place where your courage does not work. It rolled low and steady through the boards, through my boots, through the soft parts behind my ribs. I felt cold climb my spine like a ladder rung by rung. The red scarf fell back on his heels and threw his empty hands up as if the sky could save him. The tallest one dragged him by the shoulder and cursed him for being a fool. The second man stumbled on the step and nearly sat down from the shock of his own fear. The big wolf did not pursue. He chose his ground again and stood in front of the old man, chest out, weight forward, eyes calm and burning. The rest of the pack lifted as one, not lunging, just taller now, as if a silent command had made them bigger. The air felt crowded with laws I had never learned. I could not swallow. My breath came shallow and fast, like I had been running uphill for an hour. The old man kept his palm on that shoulder. He whispered the same thread of a word, and the wolf's ear flicked back to catch it, and the growl eased to a hum you felt more than heard. The red scarf stared at that hand like it was a knife. He stared at the wolf like the animal wore a badge. He stared at the old man like the ruin of every bad plan he had ever made. "He's trained it," the tall one hissed, though he did not believe it. "He's bewitched." The second man shook his head hard enough to throw off the thought and snapped, "We take him now." But he did not step. He could not make his boot cross the little trench the rifle had carved in the snow. The big wolf lowered his head and showed a line of tooth, not a threat, a simple fact. The sound he let out then came from some deep old place, a warning older than our words. It put ice on my tongue. It froze the noise in my chest. I felt the hair on my arms lift under all my layers. The beast protected the old man like his own. The truth of it rang through me so clear I thought I could hear bone answer bone. The men backed away a pace they tried to call tactical. They argued in harsh whispers, tripping over each other's pride. The red scarf wanted the gun. The tall one wanted a clean line. The second one wanted a reason to leave that would not taste like loss. Their breath smoked. Their fingers twitched. Their eyes never left the wolf. I could see the moment they realized they had stepped into a story they did not own. If your heart is tight in your throat right now, you know what I felt. Follow me. Here we tell the truth about the wild and the ways it remembers. The old man's palm settled deeper into the rough. The wolf leaned the smallest weight against him, a touch that looked like a vow. The young wolf by the stump rose and drifted to the left, giving the men a clear lane to the trees again, as if mercy had a shape and the pack could draw it. The big wolf did not blink. He was a wall and a bridge at once. I thought that was the end. I thought the men would take the gift, gather their fear, and vanish into the black spruce with curses thrown over their shoulders. I thought the night would close its hand and keep what it had shown. I thought they would leave, and we would live. But what came next shook me to tears. They decided to rush him together, the tall one barking numbers like a coach, the red scarf cutting left, the other man sliding right to pin the old man in a fifth. Their boots hammered the porch. Their breath came hot and fast in the cold. I thought the shout alone would break the spell and scatter the wolves like crows from a field. I almost let myself believe it was over. But the night did not agree. The big wolf did not spring. He pivoted. He drew a slow, deliberate circle around the old man, head low, tail level, paws placing a rim in the snow like a boundary line. Each time he passed the old man's knee, his flank brushed the rough wool of the coat, as if measuring the distance he would not allow us to cross. The pack read it at once. Two slid outward to widen the arc. One took a post behind the men where their backs were blind. The circle closed without ever touching them, and still it pressed. Then, when the three men lunged in the same heartbeat, the wolf did the thing none of us expected. He rose. For a single, shocking second, he stood tall on his hind legs, chest high, front paws lifted like a gate raising. He did not swipe. He did not snap. He showed height and balance and intent, the body saying, "I will meet you wherever you come." He dropped lightly and flowed back to his guard, and the ground seemed to tilt under all of us. The second man's hands started to shake. The barrel wagged, then dipped, then knocked his own knee. The trigger guard kissed metal with a small, betraying ring. The rifle slipped from his gloves and hit the crusted snow with a thud that sounded final. He stared at it like it had fallen through him. The old man set his palm on the wolf's shoulder again, firm now, not hovering. The animal took that weight like a message he had been waiting to hear. He set himself between them and the door and did not blink. I heard my voice before I knew I had spoken. I saw strong men grow afraid as if they had met something more than a beast. The words felt borrowed from someone wiser than me. They were true anyway. "Pick it up," the tall one snapped, but the order fell short of the ground. The red scarf tried to laugh, and it came out as air. He took a step to flank, and the big wolf paced with him, a clean half-stride that closed the lane. The young wolf behind them stood and turned his head, and 3 faces followed his movement like a compass needle dragged by a magnet. The forest felt awake in a way that made my skin prickle. The men argued in whispers that scraped. "Now," hissed one. "Wait," said another. "He's just a dog," said the third, and then swallowed the word like it had cut him. The old man whispered too, one thin string of sound, and the big wolf's ear tipped back to catch it. He did not growl. He let out a low breath that fogged the cold and somehow made the space smaller and safer at the same time. The red scarf lunged with empty hands, meaning to shove past the animal and drive the old man into the corner. The wolf did not go for his throat. He stepped into the man's shin with his shoulder, harmless as a bump in a crowded room, and still the man staggered backward, like a punishment had found him. The pack rose a hair, snow ticking from their coats like sparks from a fire. My legs felt hollow. My arms hummed with fear and gratitude at once. The 2 strings pulled tight together until they sang. The second man bent for his rifle and did not take it. He touched the stock, then snatched his hand back like it had burned him. He kept looking at the big wolf, then the old man's palm, then the ring traced in snow. I watched the choices leave his face one by one. The tall one set his jaw the way men do when they are about to be stupid. The wolf's eyes moved from muzzle to mouth to hands and back again, reading them like pages. He looked at me once, and the look landed like a verdict. "You will remember this." I knew he was right. I felt heat sting at the corners of my eyes, and shame with it, and a kind of fierce relief I had no name for. The animal protected the old man like his own. That truth rang through me like metal struck clean. For a heartbeat, the tall one's shoulders dropped. He saw what I saw, that the old ways of forcing a thing would not work here. I thought that was the moment it would end, that the wolf would step back a victor, the pack would slip into the trees, the men would take their fear and their pride and go. I thought the animal would leave a winner, and the night would close gentle around us. But it was not the end. They began to back away, step by careful step, like men edging off a cliff they had not seen until their toes hung in air. The tall one kept his barrel down, but his jaw hard. The red scarf had gone pale around the mouth. The third man would not look at the wolf or the old man at all. He watched the trees as if they might open and swallow him. I felt my own lungs unlock. It was breaking, I thought. The spell was letting go. Then the red scarf snapped his head up, a last flare of spite lighting his eyes, and he fired. The shot tore the cold in 2. Bark jumped from a birch with a dry gasp and spun across the snow like brown snowflakes. The bullet had flown wide. The wolf did not even flinch. He simply turned his face toward the burst of splinters and then back to the men, as if marking a misbehavior in a room where he was the host. The red scarf stared at his own hands like they had betrayed him. He racked the bolt with a clumsy jerk, and the metal skipped. The tall one swore at him, but the word died in the open. The third man took another step back and almost tripped over his own fear. The pack rose one shadow higher, then held. No lunge, no rush, only that quiet that makes noise feel ashamed. And then the impossible happened. The big wolf left his guard line and walked straight to the old man. Not fast, not cautious. He went the way you go to your chair in your own kitchen. He pressed his side to the old man's leg and leaned until the rough wool bent under his weight. He put his head against the old man's hip, like a child asking to be counted. The old man's hand fell into the fur and stayed there, fingers sinking, palm warm. I heard the old man's breath leave him in a single soft sob. The wolf did not move away. He looked at us as if to say, the old man would not be touched. The meaning was so clear, it rang in my teeth. My throat burned. My eyes stung in the cold that had not changed. I had the mad feeling that if I reached out, that great head would accept my touch too, and the shame of that thought almost buckled my knees. I had never wanted mercy to be this solid. The red scarf took a step toward his own shot, as if he could walk it back. The wolf lifted his eyes to him, and the man stopped mid-stride like his muscles had frozen. The tall one's lips moved around a prayer or a curse. I could not tell which. The third man turned and ran. He did not shout. He did not look for his dropped rifle. He ran with the silence of someone who has seen something he cannot carry. "Go," the tall one said, almost a whisper. "Go." He tugged the red scarf by the sleeve, and the man came, half pulled, half stumbling, until both of them broke into a clumsy trot, then a sprint. Their tracks tore the clean snow, a crooked line veering for the black firs. The young wolf by the stump watched them with the blank interest of a judge who has already written the decision. None of the pack followed. The punishment was that they had to leave. The old man did not speak. He kept his hand in the rough, and the wolf leaned into it as if he had been away a long time and had finally come home. I realized I was crying, not loud, just water falling from a place I did not know I had. The cabin stood small and stubborn. The porch creaked once like a sigh. The big wolf breathed deep and slow, and the old man matched him, breath for breath, a strange duet that steadied the whole clearing. The other wolves settled, bodies folding into the snow, eyes soft, like a room full of relatives when the hardest news has already been said. The red scarf and the tall one were long gone now, their churned trail already starting to glaze over in the cold. The forest took back its quiet. I thought that was the end. I thought the story had found its kindness and would close there. The animal pressed to the old man. The men fled, the night sealing what it had shown. I thought I would remember the look the wolf gave us and carry it like a flame through the winters left to me. I was sure this was all it meant to be, but nature had kept one last turn, and it was waiting in the dark just beyond the tree line. When it was finally quiet and the last of their footsteps had soaked into the trees, the big wolf eased his weight from the old man's leg. He stood there a breath longer, as if measuring some line only he could see, then turned. He walked down the porch steps like he'd always known stairs. He moved through the narrow lane his pack had held open, and they flowed around him, not touching, each one falling into a place that made the clearing look whole again. I did not breathe until the last gray back slid between the firs and was lost. It felt like a door closing soft. The old man sat on the threshold as if his bones had finally called in their debt. He didn't speak. He set his hands on his knees and looked at nothing. The porch boards creaked once under him. His breath went in and out like a small bellows. The pine pitch scent from the doorframe seemed suddenly too sweet. I stood in the trampled snow and did not know what to do with my hands. When I tried to swallow, my throat hurt like I had swallowed a stone. I told myself to make tea. I told myself to pick up the rifle in the drift and hide it or throw it into the creek when it thawed. I told myself a lot of small, brave things and did none of them. My legs shook. My face was wet. I hadn't felt the tears come. They were just there, as if the cold had melted something inside me. The old man lifted one hand to wipe his cheek and stopped halfway, like he had remembered a rule the forest had taught him and did not want to break it. I saw a beast protect a man like he understood everything, I said, and the words sounded wrong in the open air, too simple for what I had seen and still somehow too big. That couldn't have been real. The old man didn't look at me. He let his hand fall to his knee. He nodded once, small, the kind of nod you give a truth that doesn't fit anywhere but still has to be put down on the table. I sat on the step below him, far enough that I wouldn't crowd his quiet. The snow under the birch where the bullet had chewed bark lay freckled with brown dust. A jay scolded once from somewhere up the ridge and then thought better of it. The light had that late winter blue, the one that makes everything feel clean and far away. I listened for the pack and heard only my pulse. Years back, the old man said at last, voice thin as old thread, the world took a snare off a neck, maybe it remembers. He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't say it for me. He said it like a man talking to the part of the night that listens. I saw the pale ring in the fur again in my mind, that thin circle where hair had grown short. I saw his hand on the wolf's shoulder and the way the animal leaned, not like a beast seeking warmth, but like someone accepting an answer. I did not ask the old man for more. I had enough. We sat like that a long time, two figures on a porch in a forest that had decided we could stay a bit longer. I tried to fit what I had seen into the boxes I had for animals and people and danger and luck. None of the lids would close. The big wolf's calm lived behind my eyes like a light in fog. Every time I blinked, I saw the way he had set himself between the guns and the old man, and then the way he had leaned in, pressing his head to that wool coat like a child counting noses at bedtime. My breath shook. I let it shake. When I finally stood to fetch the kettle, a shape moved at the tree line, and I thought my heart would tear itself out. The big wolf stepped out of the firs, alone. He came only as far as the first shadow beyond the clearing, and stopped. The pack stayed hidden, but I felt them the way you feel weather. The wolf looked at us, not hunting, not asking. He took one small step forward, and then another, slow as if crossing a threshold meant something to him too. The old man didn't rise. He put his hand out, palm open, the same way he had before, and waited. The wolf did not come all the way. He bowed his head in that shallow way animals have when the world is heavy on their necks. He turned it slightly, and for a breath, his muzzle touched the old man's knuckles. It was quick and quiet and final, like signing a paper with your thumb instead of a name. Then he lifted, looked through me as if I were made of clear water, and returned to the trees, dissolving in 3 steps. I stood there with my mouth open. The old man closed his hand around the air where the touch had been and held it to his chest. I don't know how long I shook. Long enough for the kettle to boil dry in my memory. Long enough for the cold to take my fingers and give them back. When I could speak without my voice breaking apart, I said the only true thing left inside me. Nature showed me it has a heart, and it is wiser than ours. Saying it did not make it smaller, it made it heavier and kinder at the same time. The old man nodded again, eyes wet and fierce. He looked older and younger in the same breath. Later, after the stove clicked awake and the tea stained the cups the color of old amber, the porch looked ordinary again. Snow filled the dents of boots and paws. The birch bark lay scattered like confetti after a parade no one would ever believe. I thought of the men and the way they ran, and how, tomorrow, they would talk loud to hammer their fear flat. I thought of the big wolf and the line he had drawn with his body, and how that line still lay across the threshold even though he was gone. I don't ask you to believe me. I don't need you to. I still argue with myself when I close my eyes. I see it, and I tell myself no, that isn't how the world works, and the part of me that knows things gives me back the look that Wolf gave me. I saw it. I stood there with the cold up to my knees and watched an animal keep a promise better than most men I have known. My throat closes when I think of it. My hands shake. My eyes fill and empty and fill again. I was there. I saw it. The world was larger and kinder for a few minutes, and I stepped inside that size and felt small in a way that saved me. He looked at us like he said, "The old man will not be touched." I will carry that look until my last day. If I ever forget, all the snow in this forest can have my name. If your heart is trembling right now, and you know what I mean, right, nature is wiser than us.